After boarding our plane, we watched luggage being taken to another plane, hoping that none of it was ours. Soon the four Rolls-Royce turboprop engines of our Golden Viscount 707 had us speeding down the runway for takeoff. After a short journey, we landed at Ostend Airport in Belgium. As we got off the plane, some men started checking one of the propellers, which didn't inspire our confidence for the return flight. Once through the airport checks, we took a quick tour of Ostend Promenade and saw the Leiden Monument. Coach took us to Brussels, where we spent the night. Bright and early the next morning, we were off on our journey to Italy. After passing through Luxembourg, we stopped in Nancy at Place Stanislas and admired the Neptune fountain. And Arc Ferry. This was the start of our journey over the St. Gothard Pass, but the twisty and steep roads made taking Cinefilm very hard. Now to put the coach in neutral and coast it to Italy. Finally, we made it to Lido di Jesolo and were happy to leave the coach and catch some sun on the beach. One of the beach boys, Tony, had a monkey that had escaped to play in the trees. A German family that we met are seen leaving for their home. The next day we took a trip into Venice. Here is the Scalzi Bridge, which is close to the railway terminus. Boarding a small powerboat, we took a tour of the Grand Canal. We passed Rialto Market near Campo della Pescaria and then under the Rialto Bridge. Here we see the Vetermen Grimani Palace. This is the Campo della Carita, and then the dome of the Basilica Santa Maria della Salute. On a separate island is the Abbey of San Giorgio Maggiore. Next is the entrance to St. Mark's Square and Ducal Palace. This ended our boat excursion and we disembarked near the enclosed overhead Bridge of Sighs, named for the sighs prisoners made as they moved from the ducal court to prison. Our day trip to Venice ended in St. Mark's Square. We were happy to spend some more time on the beach in Jesolo to see if we could tan our white bodies. Here are some views of the Hotel Presidente and hotel bar where we were staying. It should have been completed before the holiday season, but is still under construction. Needless to say, we were not too pleased. Another day we took a tour of the islands in the Venetian Lagoon. On our way, we gave a broken down boat a quick tow to safety. Next we stopped on the island of Murano, where we had a glass blowing demonstration, followed by making of a glass animal. Here we are arriving on the island of Torcello, whose only inhabitants are monks. We were visiting the Basilica of Santa Maria Assunta. Onto the island of Burano. It is famous for its colourful houses and traditional lace making. we were able to see the ladies busy at their intricate work. This marked the end of our stay in Italy, and we boarded our coach for the return journey. We spent some time exploring Stresa on Lake Maggiore. We crossed back over the Alps using the Simplon Pass to Switzerland. Again, the road was very twisty and steep, making photography almost impossible. Here we are traveling through Dijon. And passing by the Lilian. fancy roof is Saint Gaudel Church of Plombières in Dijon. In Auxerre, we passed St. Stephen's Cathedral. Eventually we reached Paris after dark and enjoyed looking at the lights on our way to the hotel. The next morning we made our way to the Eiffel Tower and took a ride to the top for some good views of the city. After leaving the tower, we made our way to see the Arc de Triomphe, which honours those who fought and died for France in the French Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars. All too soon our holiday was over, and our coach took us back to Ostend to catch our return flight to England.